Hi, my name is Mathoni Wambu Kral, and I'm the Vice President of National Outreach and Training here at Emily's List. We are so excited to have you joining us for this incredibly important webinar where we try to help you answer a really important question that we have walked through over our last 30 years as an organization with woman after woman after woman, and that is the question about whether running for office is the right decision for you. And there are a lot of considerations that go into making this critical decision, both for yourself and for the people or pets that may be impacted by this really time-consuming piece of service that you are offering to our country. So we have a lot to dive into, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to start by really acknowledging some really important investors who have helped ensure that Emily's List can bring this training to you. And we are not the only ones who are investing in women's leadership. We are excited that many of our allies in the progressive movement have joined us in this recruitment effort to get more women running for office, more fantastic women running up and down the ballot. And that includes the folks that you will see on this slide from our friends at AFSCME and AFT, the Victory Institute, Pantsuit Nation, the New American Leaders, Higher Heights for America, Run for Something, the Asian American Action Fund, Latino Victory Fund, and Emerge America. And it's really important not only that we acknowledge these organizations, but we share that so that you know that there are other resources out there who care deeply and who are investing their time, money, people, resources in helping to recruit more women to run. So with that, we're going to dive right into our training today. This is not moving. Thanks, guys. All right, here we go. Sorry about that. We are going to start with a great video that I think really helps to sum up the importance of this moment and why having you really think about running for office is critically important.
I believe this is a moment in time that is a pivotal moment in the history of our country. We fight harder, we fight tougher, and we fight more passionately for it than ever. If you believe same-sex marriage is settled law, but a woman's right to choose is not, what is the difference?
I've heard from immigrants in this country, LGBT, Americans, women, and religious minorities who are terrified that they will have no place in President-elect Trump's vision of America. Will you pledge to continue to prioritize quality family planning and reproductive health services for women worldwide?
Mrs. DeVos, have you ever taken out a student loan from the federal government to help pay for college?
I have not.
Have any of your children had to borrow money in order to go to college?
They have been fortunate not to.
So you have no personal experience with college financial aid or management of higher education.
In case you may have forgotten, you once called for the abolishment of this agency. Do you plan on rolling back the opening of infantry positions to women based on your previous statements? I will be very sensitive to the needs of special needs students and the policies surrounding that.
And with all due respect, it's not about sensitivity, although that helps. It's about being willing to enforce the law to make sure that my child and every child has the same access to public education.
Do you support new sanctions against Russia?
Well,
Yes or no?
The answer is I don't have the information.
Now we can whimper, we can whine, or we can fight back. Me, I'm here to fight back. I'm here to fight back.
I think we're all here to fight back at this juncture, and never more than right now, which is an incredible opportunity that Emily's List has been working for the entirety of the existence of this organization to help realize. Certainly, we wish it were under less stressful circumstances, but we've known for a very long time the importance that women's leadership can make in our government, again, up and down the ballot. And we are here today to really hopefully help answer again some of those important questions that you should think through as you make this important decision, because as much as we want more women running, we know that not everybody will, and that's okay. A big part of this training and the goals that we have laid out as well are to hopefully have more women helping other women run. And so whether you are running yourselves or whether you are looking to help another woman run, I hope that today's information is really helpful to you. And the purpose of this webinar, though, is to help solidify that decision and to help re-emphasize the fact that we need you. We need diverse voices from the state houses inside of all of the states in which we reside to right here in Washington, D.C. And we want you to understand some of the critical pieces around how you can start preparing yourselves to do that. So we know that women don't have an ambition gap. We often have a political education gap, and that is what Emily's List is here to try to help address. So we want you to understand how to help get your house in order, as well as to help you figure out some of the early ways that you can start to figure out what is the right race for you. And again, we recognize that not everyone will run today, or maybe not even in the near future, but down the line. And again, that is okay. If after today what you decide is that you should help another sister run, then we have done our job. And we've done what our community has asked us to do. And that is to make a difference. So we want to lay out a couple of norms, even when we're sitting in our living rooms or wherever you may be listening to this. And that is that you are somewhere where you can really invest in this time together. We are going to take 2 breaks. I will answer some questions, so please get those ready. And something that is important for you to know when thinking about that is all questions are valid. Even in this online classroom exchange, it's really important. The question that you have is likely a question that many others have as well. So please type them in the text box in your webinar toolbar. And then finally, and I know that this may sound a little strange because we are doing this in an online format, but even here in this community online, slides are internal. You have taken this time out to really take the time to learn and to think through these important questions with us, but also know that we have taken years to formulate trainings that are meant to help give women an edge. So we really ask that you respect the sisterhood and hopefully keep these trainings to help more progressive women get elected to office. Thank you. So let's talk through something that's really important, and that is starting off with the fact that we recognize that oftentimes there is a lot that's holding women back. And we've sat down again at many kitchen tables. I have personally done that. I was on the Emily's List state and local team for the last 7 years before I moved over to become our head of national outreach and training. And so I personally know and have talked to so many candidates running from everything from school board all the way up to statewide offices, and recognize that there are a lot of things that we sort of have in our own minds that hold us back from seeing ourselves as a candidate. When instead, what we need to do is really narrow down, what are these must-haves? What are the must-haves that we need or that voters are looking for in candidates versus the nice-to-haves? And the nice-to-haves, I don't know why, but they somehow get a louder space oftentimes in our brains than the must-haves. And actually, I do know why. It's because there's a lot societally that has been baked in around the nice-to-haves that has really led a lot of us to think that somehow those are a part of the core skills. But they're not. And when running for office, many of the nice-to-haves are actually things that we can train on, right? Or improve on with an awesome team, and most definitely learn as you are stepping forward and running. There is a lot of valuable information and experience that you get by just diving right into the deep end. And you will do that when you are knocking on doors and beginning to really talk to voters. You will do that when you start engaging in candidate forums and in other spaces. And you will do that sometimes in one-on-one conversations with folks who will help you to see things in a different light in your community. So most often, the qualities that we are really looking for are the ones that aren't the ones that you pick up on the road. They are the ones that you hopefully are already bringing with you at some level. They don't have to be full all the way up, because again, there's so much about running that really does enrich you. But to begin with many of these basics is what a lot of voters are looking for. So let's walk through some of these must-haves and think of them like a job interview. For those of you who have ever interviewed anybody for a job or written a job description, then you know that there are things that you would love to have in a candidate, but then there are those core things that you can't trade on. Those are the things we are talking about today, not the I would loves, but the core pieces. Starting with integrity. And integrity does not mean having never messed up in life. Raise your hand if you've ever messed up in life. Okay, well, welcome to Being a Human 101 is what I like to say. And in fact, we often underestimate what those stumbles along the way, or what those big, gigantic mistakes even have made us, who they've made us, how they've shaped us, and how much that can actually help connect you to your community. That in fact, many of the things that I have seen my candidates want to throw into the closet of shame, like not having finished a degree, or bad credit, or messy divorce, or family members that have done things that feel very embarrassing, are oftentimes actually things that connect to so many other people out there, because we've all been through something in life. And so recognizing that integrity is not about never having messed up or having some gleaming record. It's about accountability and transparency. And acknowledging a lot of these things inside of your own story may go a long, long way. So integrity. Passion. You've got to have passion. If you don't have passion, particularly around the issues that are inspiring you to potentially step forward and run, then how will you convince people to knock on doors with you, whether it is 100 degrees in July in Arizona, or whether it is below 10 degrees in North Dakota? How will you convince people to donate money to your campaign? How will you convince people to vote for you? So passion is an incredibly important piece of what you want to bring into this run, which is why it's also important that you hopefully find an office that really connects with you. And again, that's part of what we are hoping to help set the foundation for, is to help you begin to understand how to gather those critical pieces of information that will help you make a good decision for you and your interests and your gifts. So passion. Energy. You need energy. And as I said before, as much as we want more women running for office, we are definitely not trying to trick anybody into running. Running for office takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of meetings, a lot of phone calls, a lot of information intake. And many of you may still be working full-time jobs, right? And so it's critically important that you recognize that. But you know what? This is also where passion will help fuel energy, commitment will help drive energy, and asking for help will help conserve some of your critical energy. So we're going to talk about some of these other must-haves. Commitment. This is what our sister needs when you've decided to step forward and run, and when things start to get really hard really fast. And that is an inevitable part of stepping forward to run for a public office, particularly when you are, many of you, going to be in competitive races. So where somebody else wants what you are after. And it is their job to run a hard race. And this is where the commitment comes in. The commitment to stay in. The commitment that you have made to your volunteers and to the folks who you're convincing to vote for you is that you are going to work as hard as you need to, as long as you need to You are going to raise the resources that you need in order to win this seat, and you are going to commit the time that is needed in order to win this seat. Which again is why it's important that you make an informed decision about the office that you are running for, because as much as possible, hopefully it is something that fits the realities of your life. Running for city council right where you live is not the same travel time as running for a state legislative seat in the state capital that may be for some of you 3 and 4 hours away. So again, these things and making that informed decision may also help you when it comes to making that commitment. All right, this next one always gets some laughs, but we mean it. Likes people. It's actually important that you like people when you are stepping forward to run for public-facing office. And I know there are folks that are serving who you've probably encountered who you question that all the time. And so you know what I mean. It's sort of like the teacher that doesn't like the kids, you know, and you're like, why are you in this job? So it's really important that you like people. You can have boundaries, but that is what many of these jobs require. And campaigning requires engaging with the public. A willingness to learn. A willingness to learn is why you don't have to have finished that college degree or even that high school degree. You don't need degrees in order to run for office. It is not written in anybody's state laws or in our national laws, right? What is important here is your community and the needs of your community. And what's important are your ideas and your willingness and your commitment to help implement those ideas and your willingness and your commitment to bring in other thoughts. Because in fact, running for office is not just about you, is it? It is about your community and about the input of that community. And so having that willingness to learn really makes for some of the best leaders that we have serving in public office. Because you see a need, you research the need, you talk with others about about the need to help expand your view, and you've got ideas on how to fix it, and you're willing to do the work to lead. That does not require any degrees, does it? Willingness to learn. A willingness to ask for help. I'm going to say this one again because it's the hardest. I've been working at Emily's List for over 8 years. I have worked with a lot of women, and this one is often the toughest for us. Willingness to ask for help feels almost counterculture to how many of us were raised. And yet, running for office is going to require you to do a major shift because it's not about you. It is about your community, and you have to keep remembering that. You are a vessel, right, who is volunteering to help carry out and to lead on issues and things of importance. But you are there to reflect so many voices, which means that part of how you do that well is allowing those voices to actually help be a part of the process. And that is everything from volunteering for your campaign to helping to raise money for your campaign, all of the things that people can do to be investors, real investors, right? So that means allowing folks in. And it also means, again, you don't need to have a PhD in all of the things that you are going to encounter and the issues that you will be fighting for. That's why you have a posse and you keep growing it. And you have the expertise of other folks who have actually done some of this work or who have a lived experience that helps inform their point of view. So a willingness to ask for help is really important, and it is make or break in some campaigns, frankly. It is everything from helping to pick up your dry cleaning, perhaps, to walking the dog, to babysitting for the kids, to any number of things that helps to clear your plate so that you can be the candidate. Skin that can thicken. Skin that can thicken. Running for office is going to open you up to a lot of input. Some of it really, really helpful and really necessary because, again, running for office is not about us. And so it's supposed to invite dialogue, conversation, input. But some of it won't be great, some of it won't be constructive, and some of it will be downright mean. And finally, some of it by your opponents is meant to throw you off, which is why it is critically important that you begin to sort of figure out what are the tools in your toolbox that help you to thicken that skin. And some of that goes back to asking for help. When some attack has been lobbed at you, the last thing you want to do is take to social media while your emotions are running high. That's why you have a team, and you bring that back to your team or to a close friend, right? And so again, there are tools in the toolbox for you to help you along the way. But we know that if you ask any candidate about who they were at the beginning of their campaign and who they were at the end, they were a lot different at the end. And part of it was that skin did thicken. So even with this list, it's important to remember that you only need to start with these things at some level. So much of this will fill up as you continue on this journey. And however much this evolves, as you put one foot in front of the other, recognize that so many of you have what you need already to begin this journey to run for office. And when we think about it, Emily's List, what would our ideal help wanted ad look like, right? Because voters are hiring, aren't they? They are the hiring managers. And as we think about the kinds of women that we hope step forward to run, we decided to put together a help wanted ad that we thought helped summarize what we're looking for. The people of the United States seeks an honest, energetic, committed person who is knowledgeable about her community, willing to learn about the issues that impact her voters, and work with others to make improvements that benefit residents of her community. The successful applicant will be comfortable engaging with people, able to absorb information, makes decisions with integrity, and shares information. A willingness to work odd hours and ask for help is a must. So now we want you to ask, is this you? Because there is no perfect candidate. Really, there is no perfect candidate. And it seems too obvious to point out the crew that we've got right now in DC to prove that. But on the positive side of things, we know that great candidates come in all shapes, sizes, ages, races, abilities, all of it. And in fact, at Emily's List, what we're saying is that that's actually critical to shaping the kind of democracy, the kind of inclusive democracy where all lived experiences are coming together to help make decisions for all of us. And unfortunately, we are suffering, so many of us, from that lack of inclusion. And we are working hard and doing webinars like this to help convince women like you that we're talking to you. You have the lived experience that we are looking for. We are looking for single women. I mean, when you look at the institution, at our tax structure, what is it created for? Who does it benefit? The institution of marriage. How do we change that? Who's going to make those changes? Usually the people who are feeling the pinch the most. So yeah, we need more single women running for office. We need more mamas running for office. When we look at the state of our schools and education, we need more parents, we need more teachers actually running for office. When we look at the makeup of teams, and we know that diversity matters even inside of teams. And so running for office is not just for extroverts. We need introverts running too to help make up a rich team. We need women of all abilities and women with disabilities or disabled women running for office. We need those of you who have never thought of yourselves as a typical politician to run, because actually there are very few people who wake up as a politician. In fact, I don't know who actually woke up as a politician. But I do know that a lot of people have been encouraged in certain directions, and a lot of us have never even been looked at. Well, we're looking at you, and we're saying to you that we need your voice serving. And whether that is you running or you helping and serving as a critical advisor and lending your voice to somebody, to a woman who is running, these are the things that we know our democracy is missing. So we want you to think through all of this as we make and go through into sort of this next section about the actual nuts and bolts. But everybody starts somewhere. Again, no one is born a politician. And so whether you were a middle school class president or you are retiring from your first career and figuring out what's next, I know that many of you are exactly what this moment needs right now to help solve what is being consistently broken. So we want you to ask yourselves, what made you sign up for this webinar? What made you think about even running for office? And hopefully take the answer to that question as we move into this next section. Questions to consider and to research as you're thinking about running. And there are some questions that only you can answer as a candidate. There is a lot to consider, and I like to advise folks to break this up into two parts of the process, and recognizing that, yeah, there is research that you can do online, but there's a lot of offline research that you have to do. And the first piece of offline research begins with the questions that you are going to ask yourselves. Why do you want to run for office? Why do you want to run? Or as a former president used to ask other world leaders, what keeps you up at night? So ladies, what keeps you up at night? What keeps your communities up at night? Why do you want to run? What is it that you offer to voters? Elections are absolutely about choices. It's not good enough that the other guy or gal is terrible. You usually need to be able to offer some kind of substantive alternative and to be able to articulate why you. Because again, elections are about choices. And people are really looking to hear your story. Why did you do this? And what is it that you think that you can do for them, right? And what's really important is to keep in mind that what keeps you up at night may not be the same as what keeps your neighbors up at night, or the folks on the other side of your district up at night. So even as you are answering this question about why you want to run and what you offer to voters, it's really important that a part of that answer is really reflective of what your community needs, right? The next question is, do you have the discipline and the drive to win? Do you have the discipline and the drive to win? Are you willing to raise the money that is necessary to win? And notice we ask, are you willing? Not can you, but are you willing? Because running for office will require some financial resources. You want to be able to give your volunteers some water. You want to be able to afford to buy the website and to have the supplies that your campaign needs in order to be efficient and well run. And all of those things are going to come from you. And this is a part of how people can help. allow them to help invest in making this campaign great. But you got to ask, so are you willing to raise the money that is necessary to win? Now we're going to start to move to the other part of the research process, which is still, much of it is offline, some of it is online, but the other piece of this offline research now involves that willingness to listen and to really go out and to begin asking some other people for their input, whether they are leaders in your community or even some of the people in your life who will be impacted by this run. So when we sit down with candidates and talk to you all about running for office, there are real questions. These are the real questions that we want you to ask yourselves and then to discuss with your families or those, again, who will be impacted by your running. Now, obviously, you can't talk to the dog or the cat, but it's really important for the people who will be impacted that you have some really high quality conversations with them. And a part of how you can make those conversations high quality is by having done some of this research and to help set expectations around how will this run for office impact their lives? That's the question that they are wondering, right? As much as they love you and all of those things and are probably very joyful, many of them, about you stepping forward, they really still wonder, how will this impact me? So, and the way that you will be able to answer that is by having done more research, right, about this particular position. So we know that women have been able to run at all points in their lives, and it's not for us to tell anyone that you have to be a certain age or that you even have to be at a point in life where you have children, none of those things. It's the quality of these conversations, though, that will help you to determine, is this the right time? Is this the right position? All of those kinds of critical questions. And you may have folks who really, truly, financially or physically rely on you. So again, recognizing all of these dynamics of your life are very important. And it may not mean that you don't run, but perhaps it changes the type of office that you run for. Perhaps you need something that is a lot closer to home and won't require you to be gone 4 or 5 days out of the week like some state legislatures require. Or perhaps you need something that is not going to be a full-time elected job, although I put that in quotes. Part-time elected jobs are nice in theory, but most of them still take up a lot of time. But again, there are those that are part-time and at least the meeting schedule is not as much of a grind. So thinking through all of these things qualitatively are really, really important. And it's important for you to think about the support system that you will have as you step forward and run for office. You also want to ask things like, is now the right time for you to potentially even have to leave your job, right? So some offices may require that at some point you will have to take enormous amounts of leave, or you will have to, in the case of sometimes running for these statewide offices, most of our candidates at some point, they had to begin to siphon down their hours. And then, yeah, they had to, at some point, leave that particular job or take a leave of absence. Because running statewide is incredibly time-consuming, So these are important questions about whether you would have to leave your job, cut back on the hours. Some of you will run for part-time positions that I just mentioned that will allow you to keep your job. And that means that there are no rules against you holding your job and a position in an elected office. So you'll need to research that. You will oftentimes still, while campaigning, even for part-time positions, you may need to cut back on hours or ask for special leave, particularly leading up to Election Day. If you own a business on the other side of this, the question is, who is going to take over the bulk of your duties? And so that's an important thing for you to consider. Are your personal finances in a place that you can run for office at the moment? And we are definitely not here to tell anyone who can afford to run right now and who can't. but we are here to help you have really honest conversations about what time away may mean and how that impacts finances. And again, not meant to be discouraging. We've had women come on who have said, hey, I actually had to leave the job, but I was able to put together a plan that allowed for me to do that, even with 5 kids and being a single parent. So I'm telling you, it's been done. But I want you to walk into this with eyes wide open. And it's really important for you to think about these hours again that we've talked about, and making sure that you are able to have the quality conversations with the folks who will be impacted even at your jobs. Your personal finances, again, we've talked about. And then what other changes are going to happen in your life if you are elected? Starting to think through those ahead of time, and again, preparing the people around you to understand how this run for office will impact their lives is critically important, oftentimes to having the best support system you can have and to hopefully be able to bring the team along on this ride. So as much as I wish that we were all sitting at a kitchen table and going through a lot of these questions together over coffee, I hope you're still with me and that this is all still very helpful, even in a webinar format. We want you to continue thinking about the questions you've got, and hopefully you're typing those into the toolbar. So I'm hoping we've also helped you to start really feeling like this could be something that is doable for you. And I hope that nothing I've said has felt too discouraging, but hopefully is something that you can use to make an informed decision. So let's say that you've decided to run. Now what? Now what? What are the next steps? Let's talk about it. And I'm going to start going through these a little bit more quickly. So it's really important to do the research to learn about your races. And again, even with doing this next set of research, while a lot of this is information that begins to be important for you to look up online, it is also helpful to take the things that you found online and to take them to the people and begin asking qualitative questions, political questions, landscape questions, questions about history to help really shape a full answer for these important pieces. And the first being, what types of seats are available and when, right? And those schedules oftentimes change. It's important that you know things about the legal requirements to get on the ballot, particularly for those of you who may be new to the space that you are living in. It is important for you to know and see current information because laws change all the time. And it's important for you to know, are there special circumstances that may not be printed in black and white on the website of the Secretary of State, but that may be a political consideration to keep in mind. So all of these things are very important. And look, it's also important to know that for some of these seats, whether they are available may also be impacted again by a number of other political circumstances that could be coming down the pipeline and that other people may know, but again, you're not going to find on a website. Is this seat open? What do we mean by that? We mean, is this a seat where an incumbent person is already serving? And that means the important question around whether voters are looking to hire someone new for this office, right? If the seat is open, then oftentimes that may also mean that while there's an opportunity, it's an opportunity that lots of people may be interested in as well. And so it could mean that you may be walking into a very competitive primary, which is fine, but it's important to know these things. What is the history of the seat or the district that you are running in? And a big part of why this is very important is knowing things like, has this always been a seat that's been held by a Democrat? Did a Republican win the seat, narrowly last time around when no Democrat ran? Have the district lines been redrawn recently? Have new companies opened up in the district recently, making the local economy change over the last few years? All of these things are really, really important things that could impact the environment that you are running in, right? So what is the history of the seat of the district? Have there been any important changes? Are there, the demographic changes that have been happening that could impact your run for office in a positive way or in a way that makes that run more challenging? All of these questions are important to ask as well to see the answer to this next question, which is, how does your profile fit the race and the place? How does your profile fit the race and the place? And this is definitely not a question that we want you answering all by yourselves. It is one that is really important to put to the test by asking other people and really laying out the reasons why you want to run, the seat that you're looking at, talking through some of the research you've already done, and really testing it to see, is this going to be, is this a seat that people will feel that they are ready to invest in and are ready to go? And it doesn't have to be everybody, by the way. It doesn't have to be everybody. But it's helpful for you to know, where are folks and how do they see you when they think of your profile and this seat? And then finally, are there other elections that may impact yours? Are there other elections that may impact yours? And that's incredibly important for one very big reason: voter turnout. And recognizing whether or not there are races above yours on the ballot, like presidential year or a hotly competitive US Senate or congressional race or a mayor's race that may be pulling out voters. And I don't know if those are your voters or whether they are voters, or whether this is a race that's also pulling out conservative voters. And so realizing again, and that math can go in any number of directions, even in a primary inside of your own party, that there may be other elections that will impact yours. And so it's really important that we do as much of this research as possible. Other questions: what are the applicable election laws? And those are really important, again, to have a current sense of. And so it's important to go to your Secretary of State website, or perhaps it is the Board of Elections, but there are a number of people that can be a resource for you to know where to get the best election law information. Oftentimes, there are also classes that the Secretary of State's office or the Board of Elections may offer around things like the campaign finance laws or other pieces of interest around the campaign laws, applicable election laws. So do that research, and whether it's you or somebody who is trusted, who you send to take those classes, those can be very helpful. You want to know how you get on the ballot. You absolutely want to know how you get on the ballot. And we have seen a lot of great candidates really miss the opportunity to be on their Democratic ballot for the election that they wanted to run for, because they missed the the correct filing deadline, or because they were ineligible to get on the ballot. Perhaps they were too new to the district, or any other number of cases where we have seen people somehow legally be prevented from getting on the ballot. If you are in a state or a city or a town that requires signatures, signature processes can be incredibly complex, and in some places they are used as a way to keep people off. And so there are folks that are very seasoned in how to attack signatures. So it's really important for you to know what is required to get you on the ballot and to have a plan for that. Is there a primary? That's important to know as well, because this will help inform so many things around your plans, right? It informs your budget, and recognizing then that you will need a budget for your primary and you will need a budget to win your general election. It's important because you begin to understand the political dynamics that will be at play in your race. In fact, you will be competing for endorsements, you will be competing for money and resources and help and votes and all of that. So these are incredibly important facts to know. And some of them you won't know the answer early on, but the more you talk to people, the more you may be able to start to find out early information, early political information. And then finally, how many people have voted in previous elections? Well, why is that important? it couldn't be more important, right? Elections are about voters. Elections are about our voters, and knowing how many of those voters we need who have typically voted in this type of election are really, really important, because you have a very specific number that you're working towards, and that helps shape your budget. And that helps you to understand exactly the type of resources that you are going to need. Well, maybe not exactly, but it will get you the ballpark understanding of the resources that you will need to raise for your particular race. So now that we've asked ourselves some of these questions, we're going to move on to understanding better how do we calculate the potential costs of our race. And it's difficult. It is difficult to estimate exactly how much you will need to raise because there is no national average. Costs definitely vary from state to state and the size of the campaign. I mean, in some states, the legal limits for what people can even contribute may start at, may ceiling at $250 per person. And then in other states, there are absolutely no campaign finance limits at all. So the best advice we have is to research how much has been raised previously. And you shouldn't look only at the last race. You should look at a number of previous races. You want the aggregate that will help you to understand how much money did both the winner and the challenger raise in the last few elections, how much was spent by the previous Democratic nominees to win the primaries, and how much did their primary opponents raise. If you are running in a seat where someone has been there for a very long time, I recognize that looking at their data is not good information. That's why you then look at races around that instead, where there has been movement. And it's also important for you to look at what the maximum contribution limit is. If your race will cost $20,000, but the most that someone contribute to your campaign is $130, and not everyone will write the maximum amount, that gives you an idea of roughly how many donors you will need to tap in order to fund your budget. So the big takeaways from this section are that only you can determine if and when running is right for you. We don't want you to cut corners during the research process because it could hurt you later. And get excited. We absolutely need you to help ignite change. All right, so we are going to pause and take some questions from folks. I have Ruby from my team who is on the line, and she's been collecting your questions. Ruby, are you there?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Ruby. I am the National Outreach and Training Coordinator for Emily's List. I'm going to be asking 2 of your questions that you've sent in today to Mathoni. So question number 1, who should I start talking to in my community if I know I want to run in the future?
That's a great one. And there is actually a robust list of people that you should start talking to, but I'll just give you some easy starter suggestions. And that is, since we are a pro-choice Democratic organization, I am going to consistently refer to resources that apply to Democrats. So going to your local Democratic club meetings and starting to get to know the activists who are really engaged and some of the most involved in elections up and down the ballot in your area is really, really often very helpful. And even if it isn't always helpful from the first meeting or even the second meeting, recognize that you don't need everybody. You need to meet a couple of people. And so going into those meetings and hopefully finding somebody who is a friendly person who's willing to sit down with you and perhaps have coffee and talk you through what the dynamics have been and what opportunities may be out there, it can be very helpful. You can start talking to other elected officials. I know that may feel incredibly intimidating to some folks, but I got to tell you, many of these people are actually very accessible. And you know where you can often find them? At those Democratic club meetings. I remember when I moved to Seattle, Washington, and I was very new to the area. I got involved in my local Democratic legislative district meetings, and I tell you, 3 months down the line, I was sitting at a holiday party with my brand new baby on my knee, and there was our newly elected mayor standing not 4 feet away from me and talking about police body cameras and other issues that I really cared about. And once that talk was over, we were all there mingling, and he was not there alone. Many of our city council members were there. So that can often be a very accessible place to meet other Democratic elected officials, or you can reach out and schedule meetings with them at their offices. I think a final piece of advice is figuring out what are the issues you care about? What are the issues that you care about? Is there a specific problem that you are trying to solve? And if so, then there are probably organizations and meetings taking place with people who care about, are experts in, and who are really good first stops for you to begin creating a relationship with around the issues that you care about.
Nice. Our next question and our last one for this section.
Okay.
I'm considering moving to a new state. How long should I take to get familiar with my community before I put my hat in the ring and run for office?
I think as long as it takes for you to begin getting involved in that community, rolling up your sleeves, and really being seen as an interested and invested member of that community in some capacity. And so it doesn't mean that you have to have 5 generations of family in that particular town or in that state, but it is important to people. They often do ask the question about what have you done lately? And yes, you may have done many things in your previous community in another state, but it may be very important to people in your new community that you have come and gotten involved and that you have something to share that is relative to the place and space that you are living in now. And again, you may find that that timeline is a very short one. There is so much that we can do in very short periods of time, whether that is going and being one of the top volunteers on a campaign in your new place, and 6 months later, you've gotten to know so many people and you've been very visible in this person's campaign. And so now you're stepping forward to potentially run for something in that community as well. That may be enough. So I don't want you to think that it's got to be something protracted, not at all. But I do think it's important that folks have an opportunity to see you with your sleeves rolled up, having been active in the community for some period of time.
Great. So that is it for this section. I'll be back at the end for some more questions. Thank you.
Ruby. Those were great questions. Thank you, everyone, for those. I know we had some more, but we've got limited time. And I want to remind folks, I didn't say this at the beginning, so it's not a reminder, but I do want to share that if you have questions outside of this webinar that we have not gotten to, we have an email that I promise you an actual human answers. And so please reach out to us at training@emilyslist.org, training@emilyslist.org. We are happy to answer additional questions. We also have a Facebook community that is alive and popping, and there are many, many, many questions that we often pull from our Facebook community that helps us to cultivate new programming and new Facebook Lives and webinars that we do around topics that our women find helpful in their journey to running for office or in having run for office. All right, so taking the first steps. Hopefully, we've convinced many of you that running is something you should absolutely do, that you're not crazy for thinking that that's what you ought to do in order to step forward and serve. And you have now kind of walked through the critical questions that you need to ask yourselves and some of the early research that you can do. And now we're going to go into taking the first steps and really taking these, doing that self-research is important, but there's some other things that are important. And a big piece of that now is starting to prepare yourself for stepping forward into public office. And that is something that is putting you under the microscope. And it is a forward-facing role. It is something that when you do this, lots of people will have questions about who you are, and they're going to start doing their research. So it's really important that you've done your own research. We call it self-research on you. We've even seen this when people step up for a job. Sometimes folks don't prepare properly and have not put themselves under a microscope. But again, being a candidate puts you in the spotlight. And so before you announce that you're running, it is important that you do this self-research. It is incredible what other people can find out about you in less than 5 minutes on the internet. And I'm talking 8-year-olds, in less than 5 minutes on the internet through a simple Google search. So you've heard this term, I've said it, self-research, and that means looking at you, the candidate. This is not about your opposition yet. This is just about you. What information is publicly available out there? What can others easily, or maybe even not so easily, but not impossibly, learn about you? And we see candidates make this mistake all of the time in overlooking this, under investing time and maybe even some money in getting the answers to this and analyze and preparing to be analyzed in the public eye. So when you're running, you don't want to be caught off guard. And that's why we want you to start doing things like making sure that the links or the documents that you have out there that that are reflective of your educational and professional experience, that they're actually accurate, right? And so being 3 courses shy of the credits you needed to get that degree means that you don't have that degree. And guess what? Remember, it doesn't even matter anyway. We don't need a degree to run for office. We really don't. So we don't need to falsely represent it either. And what's really important as people are determining credibility and integrity that we talked about is that everything that you've got out there that's in the public, that you've really gone back and made sure that it's all super accurate, right? So your educational and professional experience, your LinkedIn, your resumes, all of those things that are out there, your CVs, making sure that all of that is accurate reflection of who you are and what you've done. Go back and review these things. We sometimes forget. And so that includes now looking at the civic engagement, the organizations that you've been involved in. What do other people think of those organizations, right? Do they stand up to the smell test in the full public, right? And it's okay if the answers to these questions are not rosy. It does not mean that you should not run, but it absolutely means that you need to know, right? So going back and looking at the affiliations and perceptions of these organizations that you belong to now or in the past, bankruptcies, loans, taxes, bills, investments, other things that are in your name, even that thing that you took out in somebody for your cousin and it's in your name. But going back now and really reviewing all of these things. Making sure that when you are doing things like employing full-time childcare or house care, that you recognize that you are supposed to be paying people and paying taxes, right? So going back and recognizing and researching whether or not you've paid all the applicable employment taxes when we've had people under, that we've hired people, when you've hired people. So I know that there are years that I didn't even pay taxes on time. Could I tell you what those years are off the top of my head? And yes, I said years with an S. No. But I do know that I've gone back and I've made sure at a certain point in my life that everything got straightened out. But I couldn't tell you what those years were if I were ever asked by a reporter or in a candidate forum if someone were to like lob that attack at me, right? So these are the things that you need to make sure you've got your grip on your own information. And finally, your social media commentary, essays, and photos. Your social media commentary, essays, and photos. Now, I'm very fortunate not to have had Facebook during every minute of my life growing up. I came along at a time where Facebook began later in my life. But for many of you, that's not been the case. You have had social media since you were a young person. And there are a lot of things that we say as young people that nobody is even interested in having to defend at this juncture in their lives. But it's important that you just know that it's out there. So going back and really reviewing up until present day what you've said is important. And most importantly, what's, again, available out there around what you have said. And then on the other side of this, right, after you have reviewed your social media commentary, and all of that, I want you all on the positive side of this to think about, are there ways that you could better be using what I call your social media real estate, right? And so beyond just kind of lambasting what conservatives are doing, and beyond just like allowing this president to make us go into a tizzy on Twitter or on Facebook, what are we doing proactively on our social media that actually covers and engages our audience around the things that you are doing positively to impact your community? Because when voters are being given this choice, that's what they are going to be thinking about, right? More than your clever response to the latest thing that the president has done. More important is the things that you are doing in the community. And so these are things that you all can begin doing now, even before you run, even if we are years out. And that is beginning to post with a purpose. I have a friend who ran for office, and when I Googled him, I was just looking, I think, for his website at the time to help donate some money. But when I look back, all of these articles came up, and it showed me that even as I already knew how much I loved this guy and his long years of service, these articles going back showed the story of somebody who's long been engaged in community, whose message was actually even consistent about why it is that he cared about his city and the issues that he was most passionate about. So again, these are things that you can begin doing early on to shape your brand and kind of what people's impressions are about you. You have 100% control over what you post on your social media and what's out there. In fact, look at the difference between these two posts, right? Enough said. So let's go back to how we cover our digital bases. If we are going back, there are things that you can do, like scrubbing your social media, making sure that anything that you're second guessing is taken down. Even I have had to do that. There may have been some feminist poetry that I decided in this point in time was not particularly appropriate to continue to have on my Facebook. And it's important that maybe you aren't the best judge of what is appropriate and what is best for you. So maybe have somebody else with less attachment come along and really look at your stuff with a cold eye, right? And then finally do a thorough internet search of your name. That is easy peasy stuff that allows you to see what is it that somebody can find out about you in less than 5 minutes on the internet through a simple Google search, even an 8-year-old. The things that you can do today are things like reserving or buying a domain name, especially for those of you who have a pretty clear idea about the fact that you are going to run. And so taking your name and owning your name on the internet is a really simple and cheap step that you can do early to own MuthoniWambuCrawl.com or .org, right? Or elect Muthoni Wambucrawl, etc. My name's really long, I don't know. But anyway, set up Google alerts. Simple stuff. And if you don't know how to set up a Google alert, Google Alert, or borrow one of those 8-year-olds I just referenced. I promise you they will help you to get squared away. And then finally, update that LinkedIn. I know most of us don't use it, but as I said before, we just want to make sure that the things that are out there about our bios and about our resume are accurate and that they look good and they're a strong representation and professional representation of who you are. And then as we look forward to the future, I want you to start posting content on Facebook and Twitter, etc., all of the other outlets that really support your brand. In other words, thinking of kind of that the question around what are the 3 things that you would want people to think of when they think of you? And that gets you to what's your brand, right? And then start posting things that actually reflect that. Or you can do things like write blogs or letters to the editors. There's all kinds of things that you can begin doing today to show up and start leaving an intentional impression around who you are and what you are here to fight for. So finally, we're going to go into this big question about why you are running and really helping you to start to whittle down to a really strong answer, right? Because it's a question that when you begin this journey, you will be asked this question over and over and over again. And frankly, you want to be ready to proactively offer the answer to this as you engage in conversations. You don't actually have to have that exact soundbite right now, and I'm surely not going to call on folks to answer or to share. But I really want you, after this webinar, to think about this question and ultimately creating a succinct response that answers this question and that will help to tell voters who you are. Are you passionate about a specific issue? And you know, we're actually going to do a quick exercise right now. I'm going to ask you the following questions, and I'm going to ask you all to participate with me, because these are the kinds of things that, again, kind of gets us to this answer about why are you running. So if you are passionate about a specific issue, press 1 on your phone if you are thinking about running for healthcare. Press 2 on your phone if you're thinking about running because of racial justice. Press 3 on your phone if you are thinking about running because of education. Press 4 on your phone if you are thinking about running because of the environment. So these are some easy ways that we even start to whittle down what are the issues that are inspiring us to potentially run for office. We could go on and on, most likely because for most of you, there isn't a single issue. And if there is, that's great too. But if there isn't, then you need time and work to begin to whittle down not only what is inspiring you to run, but what is it that your community needs you to do? What are they looking for in the person who is going to hold this particular position? What is it that they're hoping that you would fight for? And again, you don't have to answer this question today, but you will need to answer. And a big piece of how you then take that answer and you begin to connect with people is the power of the personal story. Once you decide to run, you as a candidate will need to harness your story. There's a saying about volunteers coming for the candidate, but they'll need to know who you are to come in the first place. Does that make sense? And so harnessing your story is critically important piece of how you begin to get people to invest and get excited and to share your passion around this campaign. Who are you? Who are you? What has happened in your life to bring you to taking this step to running for office? What moment, what experiences, what human reaction and resolve are you bringing? What's driving you? What happened to inspire you to run for office? How does that situation connect to your community's values and the important issues that they are facing? It all comes together for your story and connects you, your campaign, and why others should join you. That's the formula that we are looking to put together here. And when we move from our personal story, right, once we've got that, then the next critical tool for you will be your message in your campaign. And Your message is not something that should be created in a vacuum. Yes, this is about you and your campaign, why you're running and what your values are, without a doubt. But it's also about the voters in your community. And we're going to keep saying that over and over and over again. So you and your team should take some time to really dig in on this, because knowing the issues that are important to your district, talking to your neighbors, and doing things like listening tours will help to inform your message. Your intrinsic beliefs and staying true to your values will help to inform your message. And values are not, and because your values are enduring and are not just politics, right? And so that is a part of how you are the authentic, credible candidate that voters are looking for. All of that needs to be reflected as you look to craft your message. And for some of you, this will be informed by others and your voters, and you may even do things like polling or focus groups, right? If you can afford it and if you're running that level of budget of race. But for a lot of us, this will be conversations, living room by living room, community room by community room, meeting by meeting, door knock by door knock, that really helps to inform our message. So when we talk about the things that we've learned in this section, the big key takeaways we want you to have are that putting yourself under the microscope before you run will make you a better candidate. It's important to be able to answer why you are running, and you should go on a listening tour. And that listening tour is something that is as simple as taking a map of the district where you are running, putting some pins in it, and asking folks who live, especially in the areas where a lot of voters are voting, to hopefully come and sit down with you and to talk about what's on their minds, to answer some simple questions. And it is not an expensive tour. We are not on a concert tour. This is truly cookies and juice and your list of questions and a room of 10 or 15 folks to sit down and to help inform why you are running for office. All right, so we are ready to take some additional questions. Ruby, are you with me again?
Yes, I am here. So we're going to do 2 final questions for this section. Our first question is, what type of kitchen cabinet members should I identify before I run for office?
Wonderful question. First of all, I'm going to just help everybody know what a kitchen cabinet is. I like to say that they are made up of 2 types of people: folks who know you, maybe family members, perhaps even a spouse, and folks who know the race that you are about to run. Perhaps that is a former elected official who has run for this seat, or those who have held other seats in your town or in your state. Perhaps it's activists who have been particularly engaged around the issues that you're going to be running on. But it is a really strong combination of people who will help you to get a strong start in your campaign and will help you to think through a lot of the things that we've talked about today. Even when you are coming down to the final decisions on the type of campaign that you are going to put together, a kitchen cabinet can be really helpful. And so because it is made up of these 2 types of folks, it is, again, perhaps looking into your own family and friend circle to say, who do I think will be a constructive addition, and who knows me very well and can help to unpack and bring information that I may even be forgetting about myself to these meetings and to my campaign. So for me, that would be like my sister. And then who is it that from the community that I ought to have in my kitchen cabinet who can really help inform the direction of our campaign and a lot of the key decisions along the way.
Great. And our last question for this section, do you have any advice for a progressive woman who is running in a deep red state?
I do. And first of all, we are grateful to our women who are running everywhere, and particularly where the terrain is tough. And it's important to recognize first and foremost that you are raising your hand for something that may be really hard, right? Um, Conservatives have a right to have representatives, and oftentimes, if they are living in a particular area, then the odds are usually in the favor that they are able to elect someone that represents the majority of the folks in that area. But there are a lot of issues that aren't about Democrats or being a Republican, right? And oftentimes, the way that we may be able to help people to sort of get over that hump around party is perhaps by running for a nonpartisan office so that voters begin to get to know you without the distraction of a party ID. Or perhaps there are particular issues that are so pressing, and your insight on those issues, your track record on those issues, or just your track record in the community is something that, again, you may be able to put together the kind of coalition that moves you past what has traditionally been the elected party in that area to a Democrat being the first to win that office. It has happened before, and so I offer you encouragement. I offer you the advice again of potentially looking at nonpartisan offices to begin to get people used to voting for you. Or again, if you are somebody who is deeply steeped in the community, there may be a path to victory. We look no further than the state of Virginia in 2017, where we had a lot of women win races that folks never thought were winnable in areas that a lot of progressives didn't think we could elect a progressive to, but we did.
Great. So that is it for me. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Ruby. And thank you all. We are here. We are at the end of this webinar, and we are so excited that you joined us. I hope that we've changed some minds today. And if nothing else, if you are not running for office, please help another woman run. It matters.